This is a quick overview of the major components and subsystems of the International Space Station. So in May 2020, 2 astronauts were launched from US soil by SpaceX for the first time since 2011. Now, where did they go? Well, they went to the ISS, the International Space Station. Right now, it is the only habitable volume to visit in space. SpaceX is opening the door to spaceflight, so let's see where the first stop is. So as your guide, I'm a former NASA engineer of 15 years, and I worked on the ISS program for 8 years. So let's get started. So first, let's get oriented on what this view is. We're actually looking down, what we call down on the ISS. So the ISS is traveling in this direction, and sort of the belly of it is facing towards the Earth, and we're looking on the top of it. So admittedly, the ISS looks like a jumble of components and pipes, all sort of glued together. But there is a rhyme or reason to this, and this is what this video is going to go over. So first, let's start with the habitable volume. This is the modules that the astronauts can actually float through freely, and they're in a shirt sleeve environment. So first, I'm going to just outline all the modules together, and then we'll go through each of them independently. But let's just get a feel for where the astronauts can actually move. Here, this is going under this truss structure and round. Okay, and that's it. This enclosed area are the only places that the astronauts can actually move through. Everything else is an unpressurized sort of structure or subsystem. So when you see the astronauts on TV, they're somewhere in here. Now, let's go through. There are some larger. This is made up of independent modules that were all assembled on orbit. They were never connected on the ground all together at once. The first time they were all connected was in space, which is a pretty unbelievable thing. Now let's go through the actual individual modules. So I'll erase this, and we'll go one by one through each individual module. Let's start with the Japanese module. The Japanese module is outlined in green here, sometimes called the GEM, Japanese Experiment Module. It has another module that you can see the top of stuck onto this cylinder module. It also has a robotic porch. They call it the porch, but it's this system out here that has some experiments out there and actually an arm that can move things around. Connected to this module is a module called Node 2. It can actually connect to other modules. It has 6 interfaces to other modules. They call it Node 2. And then next to that is the Columbus module. Now, to get a sense of scale, each of these modules can hold around 3 or 4 individuals all at once. So each person to the scale is only around this big, that little speck. I'll do another speck over here. That's how big they are. So this is a pretty massive structure. Now, right under the Node 2 is the lab. The lab is sort of under this, you can't see all of it, it's under this truss structure. But the lab is sort of the beating heart of the ISS. It houses the main computers, has a lot of the cooling systems, the pumps for those are there. It's sort of the beating heart. A lot of the experiments are in there. Under that is something we call Node 1, which is another node that can connect to other modules. To the side of that is the airlock. And then there's another node connected to Node 1 called Node 3. Now under this, there's something called the PMM that you can't see. And this is actually an experimental module by a company called Bigelow that's up there. Now all of these modules that I've outlined in green, they were all independently launched by the space shuttle and connected on orbit. The Russian modules, there's also another module called the PMA, the Pressurized Mating Adapter, PMA-1. Now, these other 2 modules are the Russian modules. And they flew up independently. They had their own guidance systems, their own rockets, and they sort of flew up independently and found each other in space. This one is called the FGB, and this one is called the SM. There are a few smaller Russian modules that are under this, but this gives you a feel like they're really tiny, and they're basically docking modules. But this gives you a feel for where the astronauts kind of roam throughout their day as they're on the space station.